Hey all, and welcome to Shadow Space, and we are commenting on a PCP video called CNN anchor goes off script admitting liberal media is wrong and Trump is right on China and Iran. This is uploaded May 16th, this is being recorded May 17th, and link is in the description.
The bombing, you did it for 38 days.
Well, no, we did.
And you did not get the political changes in Iran.
No, I had a total military victory. But the fake news, guys like you write incorrectly. You're a fake guy, and guys like you write about it incorrectly. We had a total military victory. We knocked out their entire Navy. We knocked out their entire Air Force. We knocked out all of their anti-aircraft weaponry. We knocked out all of their radar. We knocked out all of their leaders, number one, and then we knocked out all of their leaders in the 2nd Division, and we knocked out numerous of their leaders in the 3rd Division, and they're very confused. We've had a total victory, except by people like you that don't write the truth. You know, you should write. I actually think it's sort of treasonous what you write, but you and the New York Times and CNN, I would say, are the worst.
Boy. So we got to talk about a CNN anchor going off script in reaction to some comments President Trump made over the past few days in the wake of his trip to China, the trade trip. I'm sure you guys...
I don't understand how it's a military victory. I don't know what the military victory is. I don't know what they were talking about. They couldn't have been talking about Iran.
Heard about it. You guys have seen the highlights of it. President Trump went to meet with Xi Jinping to discuss.
I mean, I don't know. If you say that you're performing an operation that doesn't actually have an objective, then yes, I guess whenever you decide to end it, you can just end it and say, yeah, we were the winners. We were victorious because you were... They were really there to do anything anyways.
Number of topics, again, including trade,
okay, I get it.
War with Iran and also Taiwan. And obviously the takeaways from the mainstream liberal media are going to be negative because they can't do anything except root against President Trump. And a CNN anchor is actually finally admitting out loud that, hey, all of this rooting against the president, especially when it comes to foreign policy, is actually our biggest weakness, right? It is the biggest weakness of this country, actively trying to undermine the president, whether it be the liberal media or the Democrat Party. That is actually the biggest threat to this country at this point. And I want to talk about it because some comments that President Trump made were taken out of context in regards to America's current economic situation, right? The financial situation of the average everyday Americans. President Trump was asked a question in context of negotiations with Iran that, hey, do the current financial situation of Americans, does that affect the negotiations, right? How does that play into the negotiations? And President Trump gave an answer that the liberal media and the Democrats are hopping all over without understanding the context of why he answered the question the way that he did. Take a look.
President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let...
Because if they do, then the whole catastrophe scenario is we get nuked somehow. Someone gets nuked somehow, in which case it doesn't matter.
Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all.
I want to bring in pollster and communication strategist Frank Luntz. I do not think about Americans' financial situation, Frank. We were watching that live when he said...
Well, see, again, right? If it were a choice between having to hold out and stall the negotiations or agreeing to open up the strait with no strings attached, except Iran could have a nuclear weapons program, would you allow it?
That and kind of a buzzer went off to me because Republicans really need to be seen right now as thinking about Americans' financial situations. They really need to be seen.
They are, and if they start randomly nuking random countries that are around them, that could cause enormous economic instability.
Is that, should they be worried about this statement kind of coloring voters' perceptions of them?
It was clunky. It was a mistake. It was clunky. I don't believe that he actually meant it that way. I don't think he would say it that way again. That he was trying to communicate, which is important to understand the intent, that when it comes to national security, that's job number one. It's the first and foremost responsibility of the commander-in-chief. And that all these other aspects of it, which makes life easier for Americans, is secondary. That's not how it came out. I understand what was meant. But in the end, we expect, at a minimum, for the American people to be safe and secure in their homes, in their neighborhoods. And he probably wishes he hadn't said it.
Donald Trump has made clear that he and the Republican Party don't give a damn about the personal finances of the American people. It's an
Shut up, Hakeem Jeffries. You're at war with half the country, idiot.
Extraordinary admission. But the reality of the Trump presidency and Republican control of the House and the Senate has regularly made that very point. Because under the presidency of Donald Trump and Republican control in Congress, the economy is a disaster. Costs haven't gone down, costs have gone up, and it's a direct result of Republican policies.
Yeah. So you seen that, you heard that. The mainstream liberal media and Democrats
But not in Republican states.
are hopping all over these comments from President Trump. But the reality is that, as Michael Smirkonish here is going to lay out, this CNN anchor, President Trump really could not give a different answer outside the answer that he gave in that interview, because the answer was not directed towards the American people. It was directed towards Iran. So without further ado, let's get into this monologue, because I think that what this guy is saying is really spot on. And I think it really does highlight why is it that at this point, our country is in a very weak position because of the fact that we have a treasonous media and Democrat Party who are actively working to undermine the president, especially, in a situation like this, we're currently trying to negotiate peace. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Not even a little bit is going to star in plenty of Democratic midterm ads, but here's the truth. President Trump gave the only answer he could have given. Yes, the economic pain is real. Inflation hit 3.8% in April. Gas prices sky high. A CNN poll showing 70% of Americans disapprove of his handling of the economy. 77%, including majority of Republicans, say that his policies have driven up the cost of living. But the people stomping on Trump for that answer are missing the point entirely. He wasn't talking to us. He was speaking to Iran. Think about it. The president is just about to be wheels up for Beijing, where his single most important agenda item...
I mean, because Iran did it. In response to us and all of these coordinated military strikes, they started to destroy their own oil refineries. They started to harm themselves so that we wouldn't get ahead. He's basically making the same sort of posture, but instead of destroying infrastructure, he's halting the economy, which again, like he says, like they say, it's not, if it's necessary to do so, again, arguably, if we hadn't actually done it in the first place, then this wouldn't be happening,
persuading
but
Xi
it doesn't
Jinping
matter.
to help squeeze Iran on its nuclear program and end the war. Here's the president last night with Bret Baier.
When you tell somebody you're going to have to pay a little more, not that much more, a little more for gasoline for a very short period of time, because we want to stop the threat of being blown to pieces by a lunatic, by a crazy person, and they are crazy, using nuclear weapons, everybody says that's fine. And that question was a fake question, and they didn't put my full answer. I totally care.
They did put your full answer. They took it out of context, which is what they do. They say, "Oh, well, he said that he doesn't care about the finances of the American people." He does, but ultimately the finances of the American people are secondary to making sure that the country is still fine and, livable, habitable, that sort of thing.
The strongest remaining weapon in Iran's arsenal, it's not their navy or missile systems. It's American impatience. If President Trump had stood at that microphone and said, boy, I sure hope we can keep this up for a little bit longer because the economy is really taking a toll, that would have been a gift-wrapped signal to Tehran that we're looking for a way out.
But it's a position of weakness. Do you see? He is saying, I would gladly carve off my own flesh if it meant starving you out. That's a strong position. That's a dominant position. Saying, look, we're go back.
That would have been a gift-wrapped signal to longer. President Trump had stood at that microphone and said, boy, I sure hope we can keep this up for a little bit longer because the economy is really taking a toll.
We are being harmed. We need to hurry up these negotiations because we can't hold out much longer. It's a position of weakness. It's saying we are running out of resources to be able to continue the fight. Eventually, we're going to have to pull back. It should inspire your enemies to rally harder, knowing that your resources are exhausting and you won't be able to continue the fight.
That would have been a gift-wrapped signal to Tehran that we're looking for a way out.
It would have been a gift-wrapped signal saying, we can't do any more, we're tapped out, we're done, we need you to make a deal. Which, if they then just said no, what would we do?
And this isn't new with Trump.
Would we just pull out? Would we just
he posted
leave?
apocalyptic warnings on social media. Surely you remember, open the effing straight, you crazy bastards.
Yes, I
He
do.
said, oh, he's lost his mind. They talked about invoking the 25th Amendment. I sat here and I argued that
I won't read it.
what Americans weren't understanding is they weren't the intended audience. Iran was.
Facts. 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 Now, it's not hard to figure out what President Trump is doing. The reality is, though, in our modern political discourse, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. As Michael Smirkonish points out here, President Trump, it doesn't matter what he says with his current situation with Iran, he's going to get criticized either way, right? For example, when he put out that post about wiping out a whole civilization, what did the media do? Trump just threatened genocide. Trump is going to kill all the Iranians. He's going to blow up a whole country. He is Hitler, right? This is
That is true. That is what they did.
Right? Now, obviously, he wasn't actually going to do that, right? Obviously, that was a negotiating tactic. But again, the media...
but it's not, though, because when you make a threat, like, if you say, I'm going to blow you up, and then I don't, like, how many times can I do that before you start to realize, before you start to think, I don't think he's actually going to try to blow us up. I think he's just bluffing.
Treated it like it was a real threat. And they were ready to pounce. They were ready to criticize whatever the president decided to do if he did decide to launch a major attack on Iran. The president decides that, hey, he's not going to move forward with wiping out all of the Iranians, right? The whole civilization.
Well, see, because... No.
And the first thing they say is, see, this is Taco. Trump always chickens out. We told you he wasn't going to do it, right? It's damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Well, see, no, he shouldn't have said it. He either shouldn't have said it, or he should have said something else. Iran should come to the table to negotiate so that we don't have to start destroying key civilian infrastructure. Case in point, he said that he was going to start blowing up power plants, and everyone in the media was like, you can't blow up the power plants because those are civilian buildings, and it's against military law to go against, to destroy civilian infrastructure. Like, I don't know.
If he says, I'm going to wipe out the whole Iranian civilization in order to end the war, he's committing genocide. If he doesn't follow through with that, then he's taco. He's chickening out of blowing up the whole country, right? It's just funny how that works, right? Like you can't win. You can't.
No.
So
well,
that question about,
because they don't think that we should have done it in the first place.
The financial situation of the American people. It was a very kind of messed up question in the sense that, like, he can't come out and say, yeah. Like, I'm thinking about the fact that gas prices are super high and that, you know, that is driving up inflation.
Well, he could have said, honestly, he could have said that. He could have said, yes, I know prices are high, and it's why Iran needs to come to the table, because the sooner they come to the table, the sooner it can be better for us. So instead of constantly criticizing me and what I'm doing, you should be criticizing them and telling them to come to the table. You should be telling them, talk to Trump, make a deal. They won't do that.
I'm starting to see that. He can't say that because
you can't say that they aren't doing it, because if you listen to them, they're in talks with them, trying to come to some sort of deal or something.
That weakens the negotiating position, right? It tells Iran, the Iranian
Again,
leadership, that hey,
there's going to be CBS coverage. Tom Yamas is going to spend time in China to talk about China while Trump is in China. Lost train of thought.
Hey, we can continue to hold out. Right, we continue to hold out. Trump's going to fold because he is cracking under pressure from domestic forces, right? And as Michael Smerconish lays out here, he's right. The strongest weapon that Iran has at this point is not their missiles, not their military, not anything militarily. It's the American media. And
well, no, it's the political divide in the country.
American impatience, because we live in a society.
Because there was the video that you did where it was people in a mostly Republican area, and they were doing interviews with the people, and two of the people were like, yeah, gas prices are higher, but we are also at war, and we're at war with one of the larger oil exporting countries. So, yeah, the idea that prices are going to be high kind of makes sense, and I can't really do anything about it until that's over, so I guess we're just going to have to buckle down. But then there was some person, she was like, you know, fuck Trump or whatever, so... And that's the one person that they used in the story, was this one woman just calling Trump out or something. The people understand why the gas prices are the way they are, and they aren't necessarily mad about it. It's the left that constantly just calls out every single thing that he does. He can't do anything.
Where people want instant gratification, right? They want things to happen overnight. Boom, right? But things don't happen overnight, right? Like, that's not how things work. You know, in the 21st century, in modern day society, we've gotten so accustomed to the fact that, yeah, you can literally go online and order something and get it in a couple hours, right?
Well, see, because I don't even care about the timeline. Again, I really just care about if we're actually accomplishing something. Like, there was an operation, Epic something, I can't remember. They say that's over, and we're doing this op now to try to clear the strait or whatever. I don't understand how this is putting pressure on Iran to commit to the talks. I thought that's what blowing up their military, I thought that's what blowing up their leaders was supposed to do, was to get new leadership in there that would be more willing to play ball with us and more of the things that we wanted. Which doesn't seem to have happened. So even though we haven't actually negotiated a deal for them to reopen the strait, that up is over, and now we're doing this other one where we're securing the strait. I guess, again, I
So I think
don't
that
get
type
it.
of we need to have it now mentality, the instant gratification culture that we currently live in, is being projected onto the president.
As well
Right? And you
as,
talk
there's one thing that he said, I can't remember now.
about this conflict with Iran that has not lasted that long. However, the media and the left, they're pressuring the president to hurry this up and get it over with. But that's the main reason why it's not over with. It's because Iran understands that the media is currently undermining the president. The Democrats are currently undermining the president, which weakens his negotiating position, making it so Iran is incentivized to continue to hold out. And that's what we're currently seeing. And I personally believe if we did not currently have this dynamic, right? If the media, if the Democrat Party, if NATO was cooperating, right? If they weren't moving so slow, if we had full cooperation, this would be over. It would have been over a long time ago because Iran would understand, okay, we don't have the leverage.
See, how would we know? What is the plan? Yeah, if Trump had just killed all the people that were in there, or killed all of the actual, military, killed all of the actual, soldiers, then yes. Or if he went after the new leader, how do we know that he won? How do we know that we won? He just says that we won. And again, so what are they supposed... They're moving slow, but they aren't supposed to do anything because you don't want their help. So they aren't moving slow because you don't need them to do anything. What do you want them to do? We don't want them to do anything. Yes, you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be complaining about how slow they're moving. So say what you want them to do. This is ridiculous.
Of domestic forces, right, undermining the president. That the president is in a strong position that, hey, this is not something we can just ride out, right? But right now, they believe they could just ride it out because they believe that President Trump is going to crack. And that's
You're going to have to until you actually figure out how to solve whatever crisis it is that you've gone in there to fix.
Going to allow them to get a better deal if they just continue to hold out. That the financial and economic pressures are going to force the president into a deal that is not necessarily going to be great for us, right? It's not the type of deal that we really want, okay? So that's why the president had to say what he said, even though it may not have sounded great. But again, the audience was not the American people. It was the Iranians. Of course, he cares about the financial situation of the American people. Of course, he cares about that. But he can't say that out loud, right? When talking about the negotiations and coming to a deal, right? That being a factor, because that shows the Iranians our weakness, right? And of course, the media is not going to report on it that way because, again, their intent is to undermine the president, which, again, is why we just can't wrap this up, right? This would have been wrapped up a long time ago if we didn't have a treasonous media and Democrat Party.
Same thing here. And then it happened again, this time on the way home when the president was asked about Taiwan. At the summit, Xi Jinping called Taiwan the most important issue in U.S.-China relations and warned that mishandling it could push the two countries toward collision or conflict. President Trump spoke about Taiwan on the way home.
We discussed arms sales, too.
And what's his request?
We discussed the Taiwan, the whole thing with the arms sales. It was in great detail, actually. And I'll be making decisions.
What was his request?
But, I think the last thing we need right now is a war. That's 9,500 miles away. I think that's the last thing we need. We're doing very well.
Would the U.S. defend Taiwan if it came to it?
I don't want to say it. I'm not going to say that. There's only one person that knows that. You know who it is? Me. I'm the only person. That question was asked to me today by President Xi.
And that should horrify most people.
I don't talk about that.
So now Trump's unwillingness to confirm arms sales to Taiwan, that became the story. That and his refusal to say whether the U.S. would come to Taiwan's defense in the event of a China attack. Arguably, the bigger story was Trump's revelation that Xi had directly asked Trump whether the U.S. would defend Taiwan if China attacked. Think about that for a moment. The leader of China flat out asked. The question alone tells you everything about where Beijing's head is. If Xi really said that to Trump, it suggests that Xi is looking to invade Taiwan, and he's looking for a green light from the United States to do so. That's a monumental admission of an intention to go to war. And it's an undiplomatic, none of Xi's business question to Trump. According to the New York Times, Trump gave Xi no response. I said, I don't talk about those things. That's not a dodge. That's not a weakness. That's a long-standing U.S. policy of strategic ambiguity. And
Facts. But the media framed it. Trump dodged the question. Trump didn't answer the question about whether or not we were going to defend Taiwan. And it's like, well, that does not align with our policy, right? We're not supposed to say what we're going to do, because if we don't say what we're going to do, then that creates confusion, right, amongst the Chinese, right? That will deter them from doing something when they don't know the consequences of taking the action, right?
Okay, but so then anytime someone asks you what the plan is in the Middle East, what the objective is, then your answer has to be, I don't know. Because you don't know. They're purposefully withholding information so that our enemies don't actually know what's going on. And if that's true, then nuclear weapons and what are some of the other things they say are the reasons? I can't even think of them. Opening up the Strait of Hormuz, that's the other one. All that's a lie. Because they wouldn't actually tell you what the purpose of the ops were. Right?
We don't say either way. That's not a dodge. That is Trump being diplomatic. That is Trump being strategic. Same thing when it came to the Iran thing, right? But again, look at how the media frames it versus what the actual intent was, the actual context. And this is why our country is weak, right? When you talk about America being a declining empire, one of the reasons why we're a declining empire is because our media and the Democrat Party, when it comes to these foreign policy situations,
it's because we're in civil conflict.
Actively are undermining the commander-in-chief. And that puts
it's because half the country doesn't actually agree
makes it harder for us to accomplish
aggressively
goals.
with
right?
the direction that we're going.
I'm not saying that the president should not be criticized
Increasingly
when it comes to
more
foreign policy, when it
aggressively.
comes to the decisions that he makes. The problem is that there's 24/7 active rooting against the country and against the president. Okay, there's a difference between having a nuanced conversation about, hey, was it justified to attack Iran, right, in order to stop their nuclear missile program or whatever. I think
What was the first thing that we struck in Iran? Was it a nuclear facility? I guess technically it was. What was the first thing that we struck in this conflict? We didn't strike a nuclear facility. We didn't strike their military. We blew up their leaders. What does that have to do with nuclear weapons infrastructure? What is the point? Why are we over there? What are we doing?
there's a real conversation about that, right? There's real debate. But it's another thing to actively root for Iran and to actively work to undermine the president. And that's what's currently happening. So again, you got two examples of this. The media participating in undermining the president. One with Iran, one with Taiwan, and dealing with China. Is like, he's not dodging because he doesn't want to answer the question. He's using strategic ambiguity.
Donald Trump got a very serious warning from President Xi in China, and it has to do with Taiwan. If you know how to listen to diplomatic speech, you realize Xi is warning Trump and is saying to Trump, we would go to war if you try any hijinks with Taiwan. I don't think people realize how dangerous this is because Trump doesn't understand the implications. You know, Trump was there smiling. He was complimenting Xi Jinping. We're good friends. And Xi was warning that Taiwan could trigger a direct conflict between China and the United States. In the United States, it might seem...
How? By us going in to assist Taiwan? Just because they don't like us? It is clipped,
like an
but
ordinary
like...
foreign policy disagreement. Well, we have different perspectives and it's going to be sorted out. The Taiwan issue for China is existential. They see it as unfinished business from the Chinese Civil War. They view reunification with Taiwan as inevitable. It's necessary. They believe their national security depends on absorbing Taiwan into China. And they view outsiders interfering as humiliation. China has spent years preparing militarily in case the Taiwan issue turns into a confrontation with the United States. They've expanded their Navy. They've expanded their missile systems. They've bolstered their cyber warfare and air power. And a lot of it is directed exactly at the Taiwan situation. Now, the United States has been deliberately vague. Trump's just clueless on the issue. But for decades, there has been this vague relationship where we've helped to arm Taiwan, but we don't make explicit guarantees about military intervention. And that ambiguity has kept the balance. Trump looks at foreign policy like personal branding. And so then that changes how we should interpret.
You just praised him. Go back.
Has kept the balance, military intervention, and that ambiguity has kept the balance.
You're praising his ambiguity as the thing that is keeping China from actually invading Taiwan, because they don't know if we will actually defend them or not. They don't know if it will actually cause us to be in conflict with them or not. But then you say that him being ambiguous is synonymous with him not understanding the issue.
Trump looks at foreign policy like personal branding.
Like personal branding? How? You just praised him for being thus.
And so then that changes how we should interpret this personal chemistry that Donald Trump has with the authoritarian leaders. He is genuinely impressed by these leaders who rule without opposition and without constraints and with no accountability to democracy. And for years, people kind of defended this approach.
So, right, so,
saying Trump is really
like,
clever to be friendly with these dictators because it brings down the chance of a war. That analysis only works if you believe that Trump is genuinely developing friendships with them. But he's not. Trump thinks that they are friendships, but the authoritarian leaders see these as manipulations of Donald Trump. And Xi, during this trip, has laid out a red line. If Taiwan isn't handled correctly, we could see relations between the U.S. and China deteriorate.
So he's engaging in diplomacy.
Up to and including military armed conflict.
Oh.
He's being diplomatic because he's not dumb, right? And I think that's the mistake that the mainstream liberal media and Democrats make, is assuming that President Trump is dumb or that he's just winging it. He's not just winging it. He's not dumb. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's saying. He knows what to say and what not to say. The problem is that the media refuses to consider his comments in context of what he's currently trying to do and what he's currently trying to achieve, and they're trying to make the worst out of it when, again, he's just being strategic.
When they don't know what he's trying to achieve. If they absolutely knew, then yes. I literally just sat here and listened to the most conspiracy theory nonsense garbage I think I've ever heard in my entire existence. Said with a straight face. I will always tell you that I don't know the things that I don't know. If I know something, I will tell you. He sat there and said that entire thing straight-faced. He believed every single word of it.
Saying what he should be saying as a leader of a country.
I literally sat there and listened to the equivalent of Alex Jones calling the Sandy Hook parents, victim parents, crisis actors, except he was saying it about Donald Trump in his trip to China. Again, thank goodness he has a
trying to achieve.
Thank goodness he does media the way he does. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't actually have a platform.
Again, Taiwan itself issued a statement reaffirming Trump's longstanding
Not
commitment
that I
to their
can complain,
defense.
but
But what kind of diplomacy would it have been had Trump, just after leaving China, just having been solicitous of Xi's involvement in ending the war in Iran, instead said, yes, we're going to arm Taiwan to the teeth? It would have destroyed any prospect of achieving his larger objective. For China, the summit was all about Taiwan, but for the U.S., it's all about Iran. So people can clutch their pearls all they want. On both occasions, Trump said exactly what the moment required. Not for our consumption, but for the audience that really mattered, Iran, a country that needs to be kept from getting a nuclear.
Because at that point, that also isn't really one of the bigger problems, but that, well, because that's Japan. I don't know. China gets its oil from the strait? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Maybe
that isn't a point to make.
And by the way, there are plenty of other things for you to criticize President Trump for saying, legitimately. You can start with him calling David Sanger of the New York Times treasonous. That was out of bounds.
Yeah. So, as you can see here, clearly Michael Smerconish is not a Trump fan, right? But I do respect the fact that he can call it straight, right? And he can, call balls and strikes. And I think when it came to his comments on Taiwan, on China, on Iran, the media, again, is working to undermine the president in a way that makes it harder for us to achieve what we're trying to achieve.
Because he makes a good point in that you shouldn't just take something out of context to mock him. You should actually criticize the bad things that he says. They don't do that.
Because ultimately they would rather see America lose than for Trump to win, right? They'd be totally happy with this country losing as long as President Trump does not win. And that is currently the environment that we're living in. And it's the reason why it is so much harder to get things done than it should be, okay, when it comes to these foreign conflicts. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.
I guess I'm not rooting against Iran, but I don't exactly agree with us actually getting into the conflict in the first place. But again, it's one of those where we've done it at this point. Like, relations with us and Iran from this point are going to be different. They have to be. That isn't going to go with new leadership. That probably isn't going to be something that's going to, like, heal over time. Like, what do you do with it? I don't know. But we did it now. It's one of those where you can't keep focusing on the past. You have to focus on the present and try to make the best decisions that you can with what the information you have, so that hopefully when we get into the future, it won't be that bad. It won't be as bad. I don't know. I don't know.